Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN Weekly for Saturday, July 1st, 2023. And our top story today, stocks climb on the latest signs that the economy is stronger than feared. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is financial journalist Jane King, joining us from the NASDAQ. Jane, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Always great to be with you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was going to say thanks for joining us on the program from the NASDAQ, and I got all messed up there. So that, we're coming. This is the end of the first half of the year. So June 30 has come and gone. My oh my. NASDAQ off to one of its best starts in 40 years.
Yes.
What's your take on that?
1983. It's been the best first half of a year for the stock market. Well, we had a horrible year last year for the NASDAQ. So I think when you take the 2 years together, right, it makes a little more sense. But yeah, because typically, and we talked about this before, you don't see two really down years like that or two really up years. Things kind of over time find their mean. And that's what we've seen this year. So I guess the question is, where do we go from here? I mean, after a 30% gain for the NASDAQ, I think it's going to be tough to repeat that. Doesn't mean we'll lose a lot. We may be somewhere 20-30% or something for a gain for the year. But you look at companies like Meta doubled. I mean, it's been the AI thing has driven all of this year. So it's been an interesting year.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's it. Yeah,
it is going to be interesting. And I was going to say with NVIDIA, we had talked with you about that. They're just leading the pack when it comes to artificial intelligence. You mentioned Meta. Some of these tech companies last year, we were talking about layoffs. And earlier this year, we were talking about layoffs. Seems like they can do more with a slimmed down staff.
Yeah. Well, on Twitter, I mean, they have, I think,
Twitter?
like 25% of the staff that they had before Elon Musk took over. And, I mean, you may notice some differences on Twitter, but it essentially is still operating. So, I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my blue check mark, but apparently now you got to pay 250,000. You got to pay for it. And hey, look, I'm out the money right now. Maybe Elon can give me a little bit of a loan. Jane, let's just talk about the economy. When you look at the first half, inflation, jobs, the key manufacturing, the key data. How are we shaping up in terms of this first half of the year economically and into the second half?
Well, when you look at inflation, it's definitely settled down. I mean, prices are still higher than where we were a couple of years ago, but we continue to get these inflation reports on a monthly basis that show that prices are easing a little bit. Those gains aren't as much as what we thought. When you look at gas prices compared to last July 4th, unbelievable. I mean, it's like $1.20 a gallon less than where we were, depending on what part of the country you're in. So we've definitely seen that inflation shock kind of settle down a little bit. Now, I'm hearing a couple things about jobs that are interesting, though. So there's a study that shows that it's taking longer for people to get hired, like 44 days on average from, initial contact to when the hiring takes place. So that tells you companies are a little more cautious. That it tells you the job market's maybe getting more competitive. They're not in as big of a hurry to hire workers. So I think the next thing to look out for is how the job market's holding up for the second half of the year.
Do you think that there's trepidation, not just based on everything we've heard from Jay Powell, the Federal Reserve, interest rates? I mean, from what can gather from the outside looking in, it's still a very tight labor market. I mean, we're at full employment technically under the definition, but is some of it just based on which way the economic winds blow?
Well, I think there's a lot of worry about the economy. Even though the numbers are still coming in pretty good, there's just still a lot of talk about a recession. I mean, we've been talking about this for a year. We're going to head into a recession. Here we are, no recession. We just got GDP numbers better than expected growth for the first quarter of this year. So, definitely not a recession, but there still seems to be this worry about it and on the horizon. And you're still hearing even the bank CEOs talking about a mild recession still. So I think that's infiltrating into what companies, the decisions that they're making.
Well, if they talk about it long enough, eventually it's going to happen, Jane. I mean, that's just
we're going to have a recession at some point.
I mean, eventually you're going to have consecutive quarters of down negative GDP. Jane, I want to ask you. So you brought up gas prices. I don't know if you know this or saw this, but Oregon just voted to allow self-pumping of gas. I think Oregon and New Jersey are like the two remaining states that don't allow you to pump your own gas. So Oregon's finally awakened. I don't know what the right word is there, but I thought that's pretty interesting. Jane, let me ask you about travel, and that's a big one where people are heading out for 4th of July this weekend. You mentioned gas prices are down, but maybe they're still up relative to where they were several years ago. There's been a lot of cancellations due to severe weather. What's your take on the travel industry, and are Americans getting back out there, but are they going to have planes on time to ride?
I just feel like there's a lot of potential problems with air travel this summer. So we've got 5G, which starts up on July 1st. And while we hear that the airlines are 80% ready for this, they're saying, well, on the bad weather days, low visibility days, we might still have more cancellations and delays. So you add that into the mix. In addition to, I don't think the airlines are back up to full capacity where they were 2019 levels. So that's why, part of the problems we saw last year, they're having trouble hiring pilots. There's a pilot shortage. Southwest pilots are talking about a strike. They say that federal mediation isn't working. We're not making any progress, so we're going to lay the groundwork for a strike. So I think there's a lot of potential problems for air travel this summer.
Yeah, well, look, I just want to put it out there. I played Microsoft Flight Simulator when I was a kid. If you need a backup, I'm your guy. And I'll just, what's that?
Virtual reality. Just put on some goggles.
There you go. I'll put on some goggles, and I think I'm ready. Just give me the yoke, and I'm ready to go. And Jan, I'll just say back to the gasoline prices. I once tried to fill my own gas. I got tired of waiting for the attendant one time in New Jersey, and I went to go fill my gasoline tank myself, and I got yelled at and chased. Yeah. So
they take it very seriously.
They do. They do. Very serious. Jane King, always a pleasure chatting with you. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. And when we come back, we take a look at some of our best segments for the week. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. This week we discussed why you shouldn't leave your money in a Cash App. Let's take a look.
So P2P apps have certainly grown in notoriety. I think it's important to remember too that we've emerged out of we're in a post-pandemic environment, and many of us spent 3 years hunkered down at home and yet had to continue to conduct our daily lives. And so in many instances, our mobile devices and our computers really became the tool by which we were able to, you know, pay a bill or make a purchase and send money to friends or family. And so I think that that frame, if you will, really is important to keep in mind. Peer-to-peer, or sometimes they're called person-to-person or peer-to-peer apps, are what allow you to, you're at a restaurant with a bunch of friends and nobody throws money on the table anymore, right? We all say, which app do you have? I'll send you money via one app or another app.
Yeah.
It's really a byproduct of what technological innovation has brought, the growing use of these devices, and a real acceptance of technology as a utility. So if you think about it, almost 3/4 of consumers have used a P2P app in the course of just their daily lives for simple things like paying a babysitter, splitting a bill, and the like. So they're quite common. So we issued the issue spotlight and an accompanying consumer advisory to really educate consumers around, as you identify, the risks. What we also wanted to really raise for focus is, probably about a couple of months ago, there was an awful lot of coverage in the mainstream media around a couple of notable banks that failed. Silicon Valley Bank, First Republic, Silvergate. That the action of that occurring, this wasn't in the 1930s, right? This is in 2023, I think gave pause for all of us to think about, wow, what happens if something like this were to occur? And what we really wanted to do is remind consumers that money that's stored in these apps are not protected by federal deposit insurance. So, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, the utility that these apps provide, our continuing ability to engage with them as we live our lives, almost leads consumers to think, oh, it's probably just like a bank or a traditional financial institution or a credit union. And it's not. And we wanted to remind consumers that if you've got a lot of money stored in these apps, it will not have the relevant FDIC or NCUA insurance protection. But more importantly, you need to make sure that you sweep that money back into your bank account. Don't leave thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in these apps. Were there to be a problem, you'd be out of that money. And so as part of the ongoing work the CFPB does around consumer protection, this certainly perhaps presents a different use case of sorts, but we wanted to remind people with the growing use of apps how to engage and use them in a smart way to protect your money.
Yeah, and they are a medium, and they actually connect. They're like the piping between your bank and your buddy or your friend, right? Or to pay a merchant.
And in many instances, you have to have it connected to a bank account, but not in all cases. And in other instances, in order to get the FDIC or the NCUA insurance protection, there has to be pass-through insurance that you obtain through a product that one of these entities may offer. If you don't have the product, you don't get the insurance. And so it's not top of mind, I think, as consumers use these products. And that's not to deny the value of the products, but there's an extra step of care and caution that consumers need to take to protect their money. It's clear as mud sometimes, it just is. And that's the challenge. And so I think we saw a lot of these disclosures as murky and confusing. And so there too is part of the challenge. You know, I think if you're gonna use these apps, which are extraordinarily effective, and you know, again, you go out with a bunch of people, you can split a bill, to really pay attention to how much money you're keeping in that app, and if you've got it linked to an account, move it back into your bank account. And
finally, we discussed relieving isolation and fostering intergenerational relationships. Let's take a look.
Yeah. So first of all, the whole genesis when we do get the Sage Stream was built on a problem, right? When you're pitching to people, what's the problem you're solving? The problem we're solving was for social isolation because it is of epidemic proportions. And even while we were launching this, or before we were launching this, we kind of knew that loneliness was pervasive. But after, and just several weeks ago, the Surgeon General just made a proclamation about just how bad social isolation is. And it's not just among seniors, though. That's the population that we normally think of. There's a statistic out there. I'm probably going to butcher it, but there's many millions of seniors, let's put it that way, who are called what they call elder orphans, who are living alone by themselves. And, some of them are, I just did a segment on a local TV program in the Charlotte area, and it was about making the distinction between loneliness and being alone. And I was joking that at the time my wife was going away for the weekend, so I was going to be alone physically. But was I going to be lonely? No, not necessarily, because I had lots of different things to do. So even if you live alone, it's not necessarily that you're suffering from loneliness and isolation, because it all depends on how you live your life. But the grim facts are that it's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so it impacts, obviously, your physical health, your mental health. And there's been increasing studies that show it impacts, the likelihood of getting dementia. So it is pervasive. What's an interesting twist on all of this is that we know that the pandemic sort of brought to the forefront the whole idea of being alone and isolation, and different people, came through it in different ways and are still coming through it. But interestingly is that a lot of seniors, especially able-bodied and what were otherwise socially active seniors, have in some ways have gotten worse since things have opened up, because a lot of older people suffer from chronic conditions and they're a little bit wary of going out in public, with restrictions lifted. I guess they were a lot more comfortable when there was masks and distancing and all the other things that are in place. And, there's a great article in the Times, several months ago, but it was highlighting this one couple, and, you look at them, they're vibrant, but, she had diabetes, he had another kind of chronic condition. And frankly, they were afraid to go outside anymore. So it's certainly pervasive. But again, it's not just older adults. And of course, social media and being glued to our devices all the time, doesn't help. Well, I mean, guilty on that one. I'm a boomer, and as we retrofit our house, we're putting the grab bars in and things like that. I don't have a downstairs bedroom. That would be an issue, but there's always elevators, right? So, but it's true. And the one thing I do say about, when you talk about organized communities like assisted living and independent living and things like that, is that the big takeaway for me for them is the socialization factor, because we could pretty much bring in anything to the home, right? We can have things delivered. We have telehealth services. I mean, more and more we're finding that, with technology and AI, and there's so many, solutions out there, whether it's Alexa based or whatever, it might be home monitoring solutions. They could tell if you've fallen probably before you've even hit the floor type of thing. So there's many ways to keep you safe, but social isolation is a huge issue. So that's, when we do talk about Sage Stream, I'll talk a little bit about the intergenerational piece of this, because, it's going to take a community to kind of, solve that piece of it, because, there are people who, obviously there's church groups out there that can help. There's something called the Villages Network, and there's one in Charlotte. There's one here in Lake Norman. These are a group of volunteers who adopt different seniors and go out. And you're seeing a lot more young people are more mission motivated than I think we ever were. And they're taking up causes. And part of that is to be engaged with older adults. So I think, there are ways to age in place and still be socially engaged. On the other hand, I've done surveys with activity directors in assisted living, and one surprised me like no other. Was a pretty well-heeled community, you know, in terms of they had all the gadgets and gizmos to offer activities like virtual reality goggles and things like that. And they surveyed their residents, and the number one issue their residents identified as being of concern to them was they felt alone in an organized, socially, you know, active community. So you can be alone in an organized assisted living, independent, continuing care community. So, you know, I don't think aging in place, you know, maybe you're a little more prone to it, but it can happen anywhere. Well, first, there's just plain old science behind it that shows that when, and people, especially myself. So, you know, my background is healthcare and music. And when I got out of organized bands in Philadelphia and nightclubs, I went into senior communities and started singing for people. I've encountered so many people with dementia, including Alzheimer's, who were asleep when I got there, who immediately woke up and then sang the whole program and then went back to sleep. There's something in our brain, in the cerebellum, that retains the last vestiges of what's going to go are still in there, and music draws it out. So first of all, there is science behind using music therapeutically. And they tend to find that when you use music of the age that when we were, you know, prime for, you know, the songs we remember, and they say that's kind of between 13 and 33. In fact, there's an app out there. It's sort of AI powered. It's called Vera, and it's a take on something that was done years ago by Oliver Sacks and others called Alive Inside, Music and Memories, where they got customized playlists, and there's a come alive, literally, and that's why it was called Alive Inside, sang the program. But the key was he was then lucid for at least another 10 minutes talking about his life and all the music influences. So just scientifically, music can just bring it out. I do an exercise in a speech that I do where I say, you don't have to have dementia to know this. And I play like 20 songs, but I do like 3 seconds of each one. And it's just the introduction, like the famous introduction to Stairway to Heaven or Hotel California. As soon as you hear that, you know what it is. But why do you know what it is? Because something in your brain is doing it. So when you use music therapeutically, use the music that people, you know, have grown up on and know, not that they're not open to new experiences or new music, it just creates something that not only is joyful, but is just helpful to these folks in general. We'll talk about, you know, remind me to talk about something called social prescribing a little bit later as part of this whole discussion.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Visit our website and, of course, all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for BRN Sunday. I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, financial services, and government as we break down all the news and events for the week. You're not going to want to miss it. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.